Hello, welcome back. Today is 8/8 and we're doing government and security stories after we did quite a bit of troubleshooting on our little tiny remote thing. Oops.
Not security stories.
Oh yeah, not security, it's social. It's social
Special
stories.
day. Special.
We can't win.
That's it happening.
We're gonna keep going.
We're just gonna, yeah, it's fine.
We're not stopping again.
Sorry, I'm constantly distracted. It's because my mom has been a handful lately.
It's fine.
And you know who else is a handful? The FBI. But they didn't quite know that they were a handful. And as is often the case with our leadership, they were tasked to investigate themselves. But for once, they actually found something.
The New York Times headline is "Who paid for a mysterious spy tool? The FBI on."
The FBI, basically.
Yeah, it's the Spider-Man meme. Like you're reading the words of the New York Times headline, but what you see in your head is the Spider-Man meme when they're pointing at each other.
The FBI found the FBI was doing bad things.
The FBI found that they had done it through a shell company, which is apparently unusual. So somebody knew that something was being done in kind of a naughty way.
That's not unusual at all. They love to do that in the age of buying data instead of doing investigations. But the hilarious thing was the White House was like, hey, someone's been using this NSO spyware and apparently we paid for it. Find out who it was. And they're like, we will work tirelessly. And then they found out it was themselves. Now, they had stopped doing business with this company sometime after that. I assume for deniability reasons.
Yeah.
So then some lawmakers came along and they were like, well, why don't you just release all the records and let us see what went on with that company since you're no longer in business with them? And the response was, yeah, but we might want to do business with them again. So no, you can't see that.
This is also something you should add to your mental model for playbook for the, I don't know, what do you call it when the thing that they say and the thing that they do are totally different things?
Cognitive
Lying?
dissonance.
It is a kind
Politics?
of, yeah, I mean, it's structural at this point. This isn't a happy accident of doing things. This is something that was done deliberately in this way to obfuscate what was actually happening. And that's when you have to worry. Like if you have, happy idiots that are buying the NSO spyware because it's like, let's figure this out. Maybe it'll help us. That's one thing. But this is deliberate malfeasance, which I think is much, much darker.
I think the phrase you're looking for is systemic corruption.
It goes so far beyond that. It's a corrosion. Like it's no longer like a corruption implies that it's a point in time, but this is a kind of corrosion that only occurs after a long time. And they're going to drop, like, does that mean that our society is going to drop its differential on the interstate going 90 miles an hour? And if so, that's a really dangerous situation.
I think the linguists might have some comments on that argument of definition. But the important thing to remember is it's bad, and there's nothing we can do about it other than to joke about it in order to save our own sanity.
Well, make a mental note if you're ever in a position to do something about this. It's like, hey, this isn't just an instance of corruption. This is contributing to the overall societal corrosion if left unchecked.
And then you'll feel good about yourself, and then when they throw you in prison for being a whistleblower.
I was just about to say, make another mental note. Don't do that. That's very dangerous. That's how bad it is.
We need some sort of secret handshake to let other people know, like the Church of the Inner Monologue. Like it's like, yes, I was just thinking in those
But then
words.
they learn the secret handshake, and then they use it against us.
Let me see. I've got a plan for that, but it's in the hardware section. So stay tuned for, I guess it's tomorrow. It might be in a different section. Anyway, that's the new kind of spying. That's the third-party spying where they just pay somebody to do their spying for them. But we do still have that old garden variety spying that they do themselves by monitoring all of our communications. And they really want to keep that too.
U.S. spies are lobbying to keep the phone surveillance loophole. What's the loophole? Well, it's when they just buy your data directly from T-Mobile or the company that provides the GPS library that your favorite apps use, or whatever. They just buy the data. They don't have to spy on you. That doesn't count as spying. Well, lawmakers want to close that loophole. See also the VHS Rental Records Act. And the spies are like, wait a minute, that's going to shut down a lot of stuff.
Well, I'm sure all the companies that are benefiting from getting their stuff bought are also
Oh.
probably pretty angry about
Yeah, I
that.
like that.
AT&T makes enough money from the wiretap thing, or at least they used to, that it would come up in their shareholder notes. Like, oh yeah, other government services. Guess what that was?
And that's actually not the old kind of spying. That paywall burned me. I thought I was introducing this story, which is the actual old kind of spying.
White House backs renewing controversial surveillance act as the FBI faces scrutiny. So this is the Foreign Intelligence Surveillance Act, which, again, because of systemic corrosion, is used to dot the I's and cross the T's on when we want to spy on American citizens, which is normally not allowed. We just have to route their data out of country and back in again. And then all of a sudden it's like, oh, that was foreign communication. You communicated with a server on foreign soil. Didn't it come back immediately back to internal and it was a purely internal thing? Shut up.
They point out that we have records now that FISA was used in a lot of the January 6 cases,
Interesting.
which wasn't foreign. Those were Americans for the most part. So yeah, that's it's the foreign word is a little bit of a misnomer there.
Isn't it weird how when there's something with no oversight and no sort of examination, these weird things keep happening with it where they just, go through the motions and the mechanism is there and it's abused.
Last week we talked about the plate readers, where they busted a drug dealer with the plate readers, but they didn't put that in the evidence. He had to FOIA that to find out that's how they got him. So lots of ways they can get you, but they won't admit to most of them. And by they, of course, we mean the intelligence agencies, FBI, so forth. And the military, they've gotten in on this. Remember when the Air Force was running Facebook propaganda campaigns and bragging about it? I'm sure it's still going on, but they don't brag about it anymore. But they are still big information warriors.
U.S. military testing new AI tool that counter deepfakes and misinformation. Basically, it's just going to do analysis to say, this is an interesting thing. Obviously, they need this for internal purposes. So somebody said, hey, why don't we release this to the public, which is technically required anyway.
I don't have faith in it. I don't think they'll catch them all.
Not like Pokemon.
Not at all. No.
Well, when they release it, your adversaries can use that. So it becomes an arms race. It's like spam.
Yeah.
We've eliminated spam and robocalls, right? Right? So obviously something that's a million times more sophisticated.
Man, if we had a story like a follow-up right there, that would have been a perfect segue.
It's coming.
And you might be thinking, well, guys, it's hopeless. You're telling us it's all just BS, right? Like everything is hidden in layers of subterfuge and lies. Where can we cut down to the bone and find out what's really happening? And I think the closest you're ever going to get is in the financials. Because when it comes to losing money, people ignore all the nonsense, and you might get a little glimmer of truth.
Fitch downgrades U.S. credit rating from AAA to AA+. That seems like that's worse. That's not an upgrade. What's going on? I don't understand.
How Orwellian are the ratings agencies?
So apparently the number one thing cited in the BBC article here is the political brinksmanship around the whole credit default ceiling, and not the fact that we're just borrowing endlessly, but the fact that it was like, oh yeah, we're gonna bump against that debt ceiling. It's madness.
They had a phrase about the leadership, which was so apropos. I can't remember exactly what it was, but erosion of governance. That rings true, doesn't it?
You mean how in the will of the people have said don't spy on American citizens, and we have a level of corrosion such that we can spy on American citizens anyway?
Yeah, I think that would meet the criteria. And the spying, as we've mentioned, is more and more farmed out, and not necessarily to these NSO group subsidiaries that are doing that for a living. The data brokers are also the websites that we use for our entertainment. And we learned from the Twitter files just how deep they were in there. Some people claimed that was everywhere in all social media. Now we have a little more information.
Well, the Hill's headline reports Facebook files show that Biden's administration even targeted jokes for censorship. I thought this was a clickbait headline and I dug into it, and it was very disappointing.
But also not surprising, even a little bit, unfortunately.
It was very slightly surprising because whoever was administering this list or asking people to take down stuff is obviously not the kind of person you should have doing that.
Well, that was the FBI and the White House. Yeah, that's definitely not the people that should be censoring the American citizens. And they point out that even the people at Facebook were like, geez, they're really not taking no for an answer here. So the bullying, there's some great quotes and you can go through it. This also comes from court because they really, really wanted to keep all this stuff secret. But because of some court battles, it has all been subpoenaed.
The most surprising thing here is that Mark Zuckerberg actually pushed back against a fair bit of this.
Unsuccessfully on his own platform. You think about how much control he has over that platform. They're letting him run it into the ground with the whole metaverse thing. But he wasn't able to fight against this.
Yeah, that's very disturbing if you think about that. And also Mark Zuckerberg was saying, guys, what are we doing? Should we maybe not do this? I mean, that's Mark Zuckerberg was saying that. That's a level of you should when you internalize that,
well, some of them can't. And the IRS, another beloved agency here in the United States, they've decided that all that evidence that they can't protect our records, we're just going to disregard that. It doesn't matter.
The IRS vows to digitize all taxpayer documents by 2025. So it turns out that if you were working with a CPA or a tax preparer, basically anybody that's a member of the AI CPA, they were probably already doing this, but the IRS has vowed to, if you were, filling out and mailing in your form manually, it's going to be digitized as soon as it gets there. So yeah, I think this is going to be a great target for hackers.
Imagine the value of that database.
Yeah. Foreign and domestic.
Yeah. So it's going to be really amazing if we make the IRS security really weak and we let the Iranian hackers in to steal all our tax returns, then the FBI can get anybody's tax returns.
No, I'm not. I'm generally not a fan, as Wendell is, of the I told you so, or I literally said this, but this was an easy prediction.
Yeah.
I think everybody probably nailed this one.
Internet providers that won FCC grants try to escape broadband commitments.
If predictions were a bingo card, this is the free space.
This has literally been happening since 1996, and we vent our spleen every time this happens. And yeah.
So the coalition of RDOF winners represents some of the companies who got a lot of that government money to expand broadband. Which companies? They're not willing to tell us.
But I'm sure we can guess. Like, come on.
Yeah.
The really insidious thing about this is that in areas like ours where there are, local mom and pop ISPs that are doing the last mile, when a larger incumbent gets one of these grants, it takes money away from the smaller company that arguably has a better shot of actually fulfilling, or at least their excuses for not fulfilling would be better.
So the argument here is when we took that money, inflation was lower and prices were lower. So now that we have the money, the parts cost more and we can't keep all this money at the end of that.
Oh, and because bandwidth is more expensive now.
And so we want more money, preferably. Or barring that, we want to give you the money back, but we want to ignore all those penalties that you told us about when you gave us the money, saying you have to use this for what we're giving it to you for. Yeah. And the opportunity cost of, they've been holding it for how long?
I guarantee you, if you have a bunch of small ISPs pop up and say, yeah, that's fine. Don't give them fines. Just take the money they give you back and give us. They'll suddenly make a little bit of a forward movement on whatever it was they promised.
That's what should happen, though. I mean, like, screw you. You've been jerking us around for how many decades at this point?
Yeah.
Screw it. Just give it to the little ISPs.
Yeah, and I bet if, let's say, Comcast were to fail spectacularly because no one protected them or bailed them out, I bet the other ISPs would be like, oh, we should change.
Yeah.
We should do things differently.
Make them an example. Flog them in the streets.
What happened to the monopoly?
It really is just, there's all this hand-wringing and consternation over running a fiber optic cable. If you run a fiber optic cable to a building, it's done. You're good for 100 years, aside from maintenance and just the regular stuff.
But I just want free money. I don't want to do work.
We're just going to be running cables again when we get the superconductors. Let's wait 15 years. Now, I had a good stretch. I would say probably most of July, I didn't get robocalls.
I got one in July.
I got one yesterday.
The new people are popping up.
Sad. Maybe filling the vacuum.
Yeah.
Because there was a big chunk taken out of that industry.
FCC fines robocaller a record $300 million after blocking billions of their scam calls. Turns out it's just two people, apparently taking two people out and arresting them. They made 5 billion calls. But I'm doing the math here and I'm thinking 5 billion calls, $300 million fine. That doesn't seem like they would be cash flow negative.
Also, they will never pay this fine.
Yeah.
So, but just getting rid of them, they took an extra step of blocking them completely, which they had not done before.
Well, no, they were not allowed to work in the telecom industry before this, but they were working in the telecom industry anyway under all of those names. And now they have been even more, like, I think they were actually arrested or something that goes beyond being blocked from working in the industry, period.
But I mean, they blocked the physical connections.
Yeah.
Like it's not allowed to happen anymore. That's the only reason they stopped. And they had been banned from working in telemarketing because they had been caught doing this before.
Yeah, previously, but it didn't stop them.
In order to sue them, the FCC actually has to reach out to another agency because they're not allowed to directly sue the people that they regulate, which is an interesting. That's probably a checks and balances type of thing, but.
Okay. But if this kind of violation is so egregious, you know, your credit card companies and anybody else that wants to harass you can basically do whatever they want without fear of any kind of punitive action. Like, oh, do not call me? Yeah. That's not
I
how
wonder
that
if
works.
the system was designed that way.
Yeah.
The New York Times really went all out with the puns in this one. You think this is AI generated? But yes.
AI doesn't do puns well, remember? We tried once to generate titles and they were not good.
They might have a better language model than GPT 3.5. But yeah, this is another battleground on the things that we are not allowed to have in our homes.
Light bulbs become a flashpoint as the sun sets on incandescent lights. So you're not supposed to be able to buy incandescent light bulbs anymore in favor of more energy efficient bulbs. But it turned out not to matter because people aren't using much electricity anymore anyway.
We have just the opposite, according to Mr. Elon Musk this week.
Oh, industry's using lots of electricity, but the amount of electricity you use at home isn't that much.
But there is a lot of restaurants and stuff who use the incandescent bulbs for ambiance.
Yeah.
I wish LEDs had more ambiance. A lot of them are like that really cold, bright, clinical sort of light, which I don't like.
And all of them flicker. Every single one of them. Just barely where you can't see it, unless you can see it, and then it drives you insane.
Well, New York is one of the most draconian states in terms of overreach, and my God, is this. I mean, the dystopia. This would be a hallmark of the dystopia, right? I mean, we've done it for so long the other way around, and they're like, nope, we're finally we want to control everything.
Lawmakers propose speed limiters for repeat offenders in New York. Oh, you've been caught speeding 5 times. Your car is going to not let you speed. How is this any different than like the Chinese social credit score thing?
What if you just drive a different car? Are they going to make us check into cars soon?
Yeah.
Probably, yeah. It's probably tied to your license, and in order to register a car, you'd have to have this. It's like they do this with DUIs.
Yeah.
I mean, it's a good argument with DUIs, not so much with speeding. But it's these people should not be in charge of that.
Seems like there should be a lot of other things we should worry about long before that.
Yeah, including light bulbs, right?
But also, it's, you know, I mean, with DUI and the other thing, at some point you're teaching society to not, like, anything bad that happens to somebody is because there wasn't a rule in place to stop that from happening. And that's not a great.
And more importantly, I'll tell you, I watch a lot of those police DUI videos where they do traffic stops and stuff. It is almost always at least the third offense.
Yeah.
So just do more when you catch them. That will discourage, instead of just throwing them right back out there and being like, oh no, we should, you know what, I'm going to make a company that installs speed limiting technology. Let's install that everywhere. Because I guarantee you some of those New York politicians are tied into that.
Yeah, it seems likely. I just don't like the loss of personal agency.
Yeah.
Well, you must be miserable then, because it's being chiseled away. Now, this one is, it's hard to know who to side with here. There's not a ton of details, but it seems like both parties might actually be horrible, but maybe not. And anyway, anonymity is dying a slow death.
Facebook to unmask anonymous Dutch user accused of repeated defamatory posts. So this was somebody who uploaded video without consent of women that he was dating or something, and it was just awful.
No, it's the other way. Well, see, that's the thing. Like, it's awful everywhere. The woman posted online anonymously to accuse the man of recording women who he was dating without their consent. So she posted anonymously about him without his consent, accusing him of doing this. He says he should be able to face his accuser. But if he is doing that, he's a horrible person.
Oh, and it's kind of a warning too sometimes.
I mean,
It's a bad day.
If if somebody leaves a review for you like that on a dating site,
Can you leave reviews on dating sites?
The thing where she posted was apparently a group that was dedicated to like reporting guys they met on dating sites.
Oh, okay.
And-
I've heard of those.
Yeah.
Where it's like, hey, watch out for this guy.
Right.
Yeah.
I guess. Or anything you don't like about him. Kind of what's the name of it's the woman's name where she rates like electricians and carpenters? Angie's List.
Oh.
yeah.
It's the Angie's List for revenge.
The ones I've heard are more like safety oriented, where it's like, hey, this guy tried to roofie me.
Well, that's what she was claiming.
Yeah.
He was recording people without their consent, and consent is everything, right? You shouldn't have things done to you without your consent, and the EU is stepping up to Mr. Zuckerberg on this topic.
Meta to seek user consent for targeted ads in the EU. I don't see a problem with this. The article author here, they didn't take a very positive spin on this, but I want you to think about like Honey. You remember Honey? It's like it looks for coupons in your browser. Meta seems to be laying out a framework to do that kind of thing where you say, help me find deals or show me things that are relevant. Maybe that's okay.
But they do benefit from it in a big way.
Yeah.
Oh, it's Honey does as well. But so my question is, what percentage do you think are going to be dumb enough to say yes to this?
Probably more people than we would care to admit, but not everybody.
You'll still see ads, but this is targeted ads. So just keep in mind, if you're in the EU and you're given this situation, you're not choosing, do I want to see ads or not? You're choosing, do I want Mark Zuckerberg to get extra money or not? Because the targeted ads are going to pay a lot more.
See, I think that they could go even more into like the Honey style territory and actually make advertising useful again.
I don't think they'll do it that way.
No, they won't. Somebody that gets it might eventually. See also Honey being worth billions of dollars.
But you got to have Facebook's infrastructure
Yeah.
to even get to that point.
I don't know why they don't connect the dots. It's the next logical step.
Well, he's throwing his company away for the metaverse. I mean,
Uh,
the man's got a vision, and it's not always right.
I mean, if you had a personal assistant in the metaverse and it was like, hello, my name is Bob. I'm the artificial intelligence metaverse bot. I can help you do whatever you want to do. And if you say yes, then I will share what we're working on together with advertisers who may have products that are relevant and interesting for what you're working on. It's like,
You would not say yes to that.
I wouldn't say yes. to that.
well, then why
someone
are you
might.
advocating it?
So I talked to my neighbor this week. Took over some jam to my neighbor and then ended up getting stuck in a conversation with her for like 2 hours. She has her granddaughter or something over
Too
there.
awkward to be like, I have to go now.
Yeah. And she was telling me that her granddaughter's always on like Snapchat and she talks to AI all the time. Like I was like, wow, I didn't think anyone would use that feature, but apparently kids are.
Yeah.
She's a teenager, but
You know what I prefer to use? Inner monologue.
I don't need Snapchat's AI to talk to me.
I can envision scenarios where somebody's asking me questions and then I would tell them to go talk to the AI about keywords ABC XYZ, because I basically already do that with Google. Like somebody will ask me a question, it's like, this is gonna be a long answer. The things you need to Google are this, and then come back.
Well, speaking of AI, the EU has decided to take a pretty strong approach to regulating it and controlling what can and cannot be done with it. And some of the open source companies are like, hey, bro, we're not the target here.
Hugging Face, GitHub, and more unite to defend open source in EU AI legislation. Because the EU AI legislation is dangerously close to where the United States was in the 80s of classifying encryption software as munitions. Not really. That's not exactly what's happening in the EU, but a lot of companies feel that way.
Yeah, they want to basically have rules that many of the big AI companies have probably had a hand in crafting and are going to be disadvantageous for the smaller guys.
Also, math should never be illegal, whether that's a decryption key for DVDs or this.
Or a string of ones and zeros coming into my home over a cable.
Yeah, I can't think of any better way to, or if you're bombarded with them via radio signals, it's like you should be able to do with those whatever you want.
I was always blown away by the satellite companies going after the people with the cards. Like, well, just stop sending it into my home.
Yeah.
Problem solved.
Oh, wait.
Yeah. But in Italy, that is not how they're doing it. They have, I think a lot of this is based on streaming of soccer.
Yeah.
Because it's big business over there. They want the live soccer. And it's in different countries and they make a lot of money. So obviously, there's pirate streams.
Italian pirate IPTV customers risk a €5,000 fine starting August 8th, 2023. And this is consumers of the pirate, not the broadcasters.
So AgCom, which is telecom regulator, has given itself power to not only charge $5,000 if you're caught doing it, but block DNS and go after the source of it and kind of take things into their own hand. They've given themselves a lot of power.
Yeah. The only reaction here should be for the Italian citizens to call up some French citizens to come visit with them for a while to riot and protest.
Teach them the ropes.
Yeah.
I looked at that picture of like the letter and it was in Italian and I was like, well, that makes sense. I don't know what I expected.
Oh, yeah. Yeah, they're basically just saying we can do what we want to shut you down. And ISPs are required to proactively do something about this.
It's madness.
So they're sort of like press ganging the ISPs into doing their dirty work. And if they don't, then they can also face penalty.
You want the Linode VPN plug? You can use the Linode link below for $100 if you're in Italy. Set up your own VPN, encrypt everything, and then good luck.
And then
This is an ad.
make a snapshot of that and rotate out a new machine, new VM every week.
Yeah.
And get a new IP address every week. You could automate that.
Just hit a button. Yeah. Their installer makes it pretty easy.
Well, one thing that it will be much easier to escape is the constantly constricting net of Worldcoin, who aims to capture all of our eyes and enslave them.
Worldcoin being probed by French privacy regulator for questionable practices. Well, you guys are a little late there.
It's certainly questionable to scan people's eyes and store that data. So, yeah, they have some rules about biometrics, but nothing, these guys aren't doing anything illegal necessarily right now, but the regulators are like, come on, it's obvious.
When are you going to eat that chocolate?
I'm gonna-
Just do it on camera so we can see.
I'm going to do this is from Austria. So
Caution to the wind.
I forgot to mention it that the at LTX our one of our Austrian viewers gave me some real chocolate things and orange. I'm to
Are
the
you
point where
saving
like
the
this
paper?
is okay.
You're so slow about opening it up.
I'm paranoid that I will leave a little piece of metal stuck to it because it's kind of sticky. Gosh, that smells very chocolatey.
Wow. Madness.
Did you eat one of these already? Was this the one that like made you a little?
My lips a little red.
Oh, we'll get to watch that in real time.
Yeah.
I can still feel it.
Might be the milk chocolate.
Yeah.
You know, the worst thing about Austrian chocolate, though, is that an hour later you're going to be hungry for power. That's a Norm Macdonald joke. And God, I hate these register headlines because they use the vernacular of Britain and it doesn't always make any sense when you're trying to read it.
I'll
But,
translate when we read. It's fine.
last week we heard about a woman who Instagrammed a motorcycle accident victim. And there was an argument of like, well, does that violate HIPAA? Now they're not HIPAA, but they have their own rules. I think this is probably just as bad. However, it was somewhat sanctioned.
Brit Healthcare have been sanctioned for using WhatsApp chat for sharing patient data. So doctors and everybody else using the hospital systems was too cumbersome and slow. They were sharing data on WhatsApp, which was not allowed.
But it was during the pandemic. So some of these people weren't physically present, but they still need to look at the records. Problem is, there were too many people in the Snapchat group. So some people that shouldn't have seen the records saw records of children. So,
But they were all healthcare professionals. Definitely nobody was screenshotting and posting somewhere else like, look at this messed up kid.
well, that's what they were doing to the motorcycle victim.
That's why it was weird. I thought, it's one thing if you're sharing it in like a clinical context or like, hey, this is an example of this thing, but
Doctors do share weird stuff. Like I knew somebody that had some surgery, and the doctor was like, oh yeah, here's this surgery where I had to like remove somebody's face temporarily in order to do whatever. And it was just like, congratulations.
I think that you kind of have the dark humor when you work in healthcare after a while because you're dealing with like horrible injuries and stuff all the time. It's your way of coping.
Well,
It's kind of like us during the news.
Yeah,
Or-
but I don't tweet that stuff.
No, I mean,
That's true, yeah.
they weren't showing me. It was just like,
They just mentioned it.
you don't want to go through my phone because,
I take pictures of people with their face off.
yeah, I mean, it's just like, okay.
And it stays behind him like, I bet I do, bro. Well, Wendell, you would have been possibly affected by this, but I doubt that you were reading any Facebook news while you were on your trip.
Facebook and Instagram's news blackout in Canada starts today.
That was August 1st.
Yeah, so Meta is responding to new legislation by blocking news content on 2 platforms. Seems reasonable. So far, no one's cared.
Yeah.
3 days later.
They did in Australia, and everybody settled. That's probably what's going to play out here.
If you're Canadian, how devastated are you that you can't
Oh my God.
access news from Facebook and or Instagram
How devastating that you'll have to click on a different website to
instead
get
of the
your
like
news.
5? Yeah.
And the hope for the revolution in humanity to bring us all into a new golden age is moving slowly and
Or
uncertainly.
Depending on, this
Faster
kind of
than
thing.
expected.
I want it now. I want Superconductor Prime.
South Korean experts seek to verify room temperature superconductor claim. So this is the Reuters article as of August 3rd. It's been updated a couple of times. And there have been other people that have replicated this. I would say overall there's guarded optimism, but there's still a lot of holes here.
We got one group that got superconductivity, but not room temperature. We got one that got levitation, no superconductivity. And we got one that says they couldn't do either, I think, right?
Yeah.
It's been mixed. Yeah, a few people said they could replicate and a few others couldn't.
The guy that there's another guy this has not been updated with that just finished their experiments today. It's like Versus Space Labs or Vespa or something, and they got levitation and they're sending it off to another university for analysis of the superconductivity aspects. But it's unlikely that it's the diamagnetic effect because it responds the same way no matter the orientation of their magnet. So, but it does seem like it's a weird sort of one-dimensional superconductor instead of a two-dimensional superconductor. So that's maybe we don't know. We don't know what this is going to be. In 5 years, will the world be unrecognizable, or in 20 years will the world be unrecognizable? But there's a lot of new cool stuff in this.
Think about 5 years ago.
Yeah.
You can make that prediction at any point in history.
Oh man, 5 years ago was the before times. I was still playing Overwatch 1. I didn't have to worry every time I went out in public.
But the interesting thing about the reason the Koreans are doing this is because they were the first, obviously. So there's an argument that those companies would have the first crack at it, which would be like the 90s and America with the internet. I was like, oh, what? All of a sudden we have a budget surplus. Yeah. The only time we've ever done that. Bill Clinton got to enjoy it because it was the internet. They want that same kind of thing. But the Korean citizens are flooding money into these companies. You thought that AI and blockchain were powerful words. Now, if you start saying superconductor, people just throw money in.
The copper that you need is one of the ingredients cited from those researchers' paper. 2 weeks ago, it was $1,000 a kilo. It's $20,000 a kilo today.
Meth head's salivating right now.
I don't think it's air conditioner copper.
You don't know.
Yeah, so they're very concerned about the FOMO because if this flops, that could
Yeah.
have some serious impact.
It's like, oh, it is superconducting, but not in any kind of useful or practical way. And it's just like, no.
But look how cool.
And poor China, they are having a tough time economically and they also got destroyed by the super typhoon.
Oh, yeah.
So
record flooding, I think.
their hopes of being the superconductor leader is probably pretty remote, and they're just trying to get control on everything and keep their lockdown power as their government is basically corrupt and broke.
Generative AI services pulled from Apple App Store in China ahead of new regulations.
We do not want you talking to the AI and learning things that we do not approve.
No models that aren't approved.
And they are also looking to lock down the children. Now, they did this with the video games, you'll remember. And I guess they consider that to be successful.
Enough that they're trying this.
Yeah.
China looks to limit children to 2 hours a day on their phones.
It's actually a sliding scale. 16 to 18 was it 2 or 4 hours?
I thought it was also based on your grades.
And then the one,
Wow.
16 to 18 was one value. And then 16 and under was a lesser value or paywall, unfortunately. But then the lowest ages, 8 minutes.
Yeah.
What are you going to do in 8 minutes?
Only make an emergency call to your parents.
Oh, here it is. Children under 8.
8 minutes. Can you bank it? That wouldn't be terrible.
You really
I
have to
get
be
to play
selective.
one whole round of Fortnite after 6 months.
Part of China's suffering is the sanctions and the export controls that we've inflicted on them. They've decided to lash back.
China curbs drone exports over national security concerns. And I have to hand it to their PR team. They made it sound like that drones were showing up in war zones that they didn't intend for them to show up in. And which side that is, they left sort of ambiguous.
Yeah.
Well, the timing is interesting because we are just getting a lot of Russian drone attacks in Moscow.
Yeah.
I mean, Ukrainian drone attacks in Moscow. Yeah. So did somebody get a phone call? Like, hey, bro.
I don't know. I don't know what to make of this. This is going to be a developing story, though.
We're supposed to be BFFs, and your drones are showing up in our government buildings. And China, they have been limited from certain lithography equipment. All the cutting edge stuff, they are now very, very restricted from getting their hands on. So they did the pragmatic thing, but apparently that's not allowed either.
The U.S. and Europe are growing alarmed by China's rush into legacy chips. It turns out you can do things well enough. But it's not that the U.S. the people in the U.S. really should be alarmed. It's just like we don't make things locally that are the equivalent of light bulbs and light switches. And if China has a good enough lithography process to make power transistors and automotive equipment and USB controllers, that's good enough. It doesn't need to be on the latest bleeding edge stuff. We haven't had the volume to produce literally everything on the bleeding edge stuff. In the industry, it has always been only a very small number of things are on the very latest thing. And it's chained together with like 5 generations of IC at one time. It doesn't matter that you're missing that last 3 generations just for economic growth and boom and even military applications.
But they don't have a solution for, like they're saying, hey, China shouldn't be allowed to do this because then they can corner the market. And we've seen what happens when the supply chain breaks down. But they don't have an excuse for or an explanation of like, well, how are we going to get them? Who's going to make them?
We would have to have the industry here, which is not going to happen overnight.
Yeah, that's going to be a slow process.
I mean, it would take, we would have to, if like the CHIPS Act is not enough, we would have to handle it like the moon landing. Like, but we're not going to land on the moon. We're just going to make stuff here.
But more importantly, China is famous for subsidizing.
Yeah.
To control the prices and flood, like solar panels, for example, played out the same way. China made them super cheap because they subsidized them, and then they conquered the planet with their solar panels.
There were actually a few places here that manufactured good quality solar cells in the late 80s and early 90s, and they were subsidized out of existence.
Steel.
Yeah, steel
played out like that. It's a good strategy, but maybe not.
You'd think we would maybe take that strategy for ourselves, but instead we just away money on other things.
That might have been a good use of the national debt. It's like, we'll just out subsidy those people, but apparently we're too stupid.
Now China is facing a demographic problem like many countries are. Have you guys heard of the 4 no's? Remember lying flat?
Yeah.
Yeah.
And what was the other one?
There was
Super
one we
Drake?
did that was like a person wanting to be professional child. I think that was in Korea.
So
That was the translation, yeah.
Yeah.
the newest one is the 4 no's. No job, no house, no car, or no car loan, no mortgage, and no children. And this is sort of sweeping the Chinese youth. They're like, no, things are so bad. We're not doing any of those things. And that's kind of a death sentence for a country, as Japan is learning.
Japan's population drops by nearly 800,000 with falls in every prefecture for the first time. So young people, old people, middle-aged people, we lost almost 1 million people, and there's not replacements on the way.
Oh, it sounds like a paradise. I kind of hope that it stabilizes to some degree in 20 or 30 years. Not going to retire there.
There won't be anybody to take care of you when you're retirement age.
I'll just wander. Oh yeah, robots. I'll just wander off into one of the cherry blossom woods and lay down and die sometime.
The superconductor robots, man. If the superconductor thing is real and can actually store energy, it'll be crazy. Like we'll have superconductor assisted energy storage and just madness.
Is it Kyoto that does the cherry blossom festival, like in the fountains and stuff? They're like, oh, look at the fountain. And they look down and like your corpse is just in the river.
But they also have that forest.
Oh, ooh, yeah, I forgot about that. It's darker.
The cherry blossom festival around DC is like serious business.
I've heard of that. I've never actually been to that one either, but
Well, China is not the only country that is trying to control imports and exports to boost their own economy.
India restricts laptop and server import to boost local manufacturing, although in a very late-breaking update, they have delayed implementing this because all of Indian infrastructure companies were freaking out because they're not ready. But they want domestically manufactured laptops and servers, and India's got a heck of a lot more industry for that than we do here in America.
But it's kind of like us with the legacy chips, right?
Yeah.
I mean, what are you going to do? You're just going to go without? You can't do that.
Yeah. Well, it's probably a good strategy. Actually, India is probably in a better place because they do have a lot of the facilities, but the workers don't yet have enough practice doing that. See, also, like, Apple's like, oh, our quality control is we'll reject 50%, whereas we reject less than 1% from wherever else. China, I suppose.
Well, you need a new frontier if you're going to be one of these colonizing imperialist countries. You need people to take advantage of. And it seems like this is going to be the people that everybody in the tech world is looking to take advantage of.
Kenya suspends Worldcoin scans over security and privacy and financial concerns. Kenya. If Kenya is saying, well, hang on, slow down a minute.
It's a bad idea. They're not the first to do it, but they are the latest. And there was a lot of push in Kenya. They had a lot of what they call orbs, where you go and have your face or your eyeball scanned.
yeah, didn't we do a story a couple years ago? It was a few African countries that had these just pop up, and it was like, we'll pay you.
Yeah, 25 world coins if you go and get scanned in, and people were lined up around the block. And the government came in and chased them out, shut the things down. And Kenya is also one of those countries who are kind of part of the digital revolution, but the infrastructure is a little weak. So everybody has a phone, they use them for payments and stuff like that, but they're prone to outages and breakdowns. And now a new kind of attack.
Kenya reports cyber attacks are causing government systems outages. This is just cyber attackers, people looking for ransom payouts and maybe even other governments. There's some hints there that suggest that, they're being bullied like other governments are doing it, not just criminal groups.
I imagine that the French banking system is probably inherent there to some degree, right?
And the, global banking system, and you want to drive criminal enterprise underground, laundering it through another country is a very effective way to do that. That's already happening in some other African nations. Because, the heat's on HSBC. HSBC can't be taking that dirty money the way that they used to.
Well, TikTok continues to be the boogeyman, and more and more we're shutting it down here in America. And around the world, it is being distrusted because of China. Australia has apparently decided that that's a good thing to do to get more power. Let's add it to the list.
Australian Senate committee recommends government ban on TikTok be extended to include WeChat. But somebody in the InfoSec community was looking through the binaries and saying, like, wait a minute, there's a lot that's copy pasted from this one binary into the other one. What's going on with that?
Unrelated, the WeChat logo, I've never seen it before. It looks a little bit like discount Android. Like, like it looks like a little Android robot with the colors and the little eyeballs.
I guess.
Yeah. Wonder if
It's
that
a-
was intentional.
It's a speech bubble, but it's supposed to look like eyes as well, right?
Yeah, that's the vibe I got from it. I wonder if they, like I said, I wonder if they did that on purpose because it's like, oh, it looks more official.
And Australians are also fighting back against this new movement of back to the office.
The point of no return. Australians fight for the right to work from home permanently. Nobody wants to go back to the office. Executives that invested in real estate are left wondering, oh no,
Well,
what did I invest in?
Isn't the real estate market in Australia absolutely insane too? I wouldn't blame people for not wanting to have to move back to a city.
Yeah, we got lots of filler articles too that are like, we can't just convert those offices to houses. We'd have to spend money.
It's like,
I think that market's going to correct itself given time.
Yeah.
That's what's happening in China. And poor Reddit. It seems that the Reddit controversy is over, the war is ended, and the bad guys have very clearly won.
Reddit calls for, quote unquote, a few new mods after axing and polarizing some of its best. Reddit as an information repository, it really is hard to avoid. I've tried not to use it for the last few weeks, and it's like, crap, Google is worthless. I'm going to have to go to Reddit to find the thing that I need.
That's how I feel about, like niche stuff like canning.
Yeah.
Can't find information about like recipes that are probably safe.
That's
in other
horrifying.
places.
We got to get off our butts and start building the Fediverse, I guess. I don't know what the fix is.
Or maybe we all just start having our own little websites like we used to back in the day.
Yeah, no, just a protocol for aggregating them together like RSS, but less janky and stupid than RSS.
Google's never going to show your website to anybody.
Well, they're already not because they're so dysfunctional, even though we have the answer.
Just stuff it with Reddit keywords.
Well, the sad reality is that most people, to get their news and stuff, now go to Twitter, which is
Again, the same problem. Different.
such a bad idea.
You should be
skin
coming
set.
here to YouTube.
Remember the AI dungeon thing where we were like wearing the skin of Willy Wonka?
Oh yeah.
Yeah, it's Twitter is like that now. That's the real life
Let it
version of
die.
it. Yeah.
But it seems less and less likely as we learn more about this that Twitter is not being dethroned anytime soon.
Most of the 100 million people who signed up for Threads stopped using it. We're seeing more people coming back on a daily basis than I'd expected, Mark Zuckerberg. Hey, at least he's honest.
Yeah, I mean, it was very clearly like a PR stunt, an effective one because it did get Thread's name out there. But
honestly, if Threads actually had all the features and it were more functional, they probably would have had a higher conversion rate. And so I think this is, from Musk's point of view, this has got to be terrifying because people are not really stuck to the platform that completely. And for Zuckerberg, it's got to be really encouraging because even though they didn't stick around, it shows that if you had what they were looking for, they would.
Well, maybe you're somebody who rejects all of that. You don't use social media. You don't use Amazon. You shop local. And when you have to go online, you do it from bespoke, one-off creators. But even they have to suffer under big tech.
Etsy is scrambling to avert a widespread seller strike because UK vendors are starting to boycott the platform because it's holding your money for an arbitrarily long period
maybe like
of time.
2 to 3 months in some cases. Like it wasn't a trivial amount of time.
It's like, oh, this is fraud. It's like, well, not really.
45 to 90 days, it's supposed to be to cover returns. But they keep a lot of it.
Yeah.
75%.
And if you're an actual small seller who's making stuff, like you need to be able to buy supplies and ship stuff, and you might not be able to do it when half your money is just gone. Which, have you used Etsy?
No.
I've used Etsy a few times. And like, there are great little shops like that, but it's also being taken over by like Chinese bots
Imagine how easy it would be for AI.
to just make
Spin
fake
up a little
listings.
Etsy
Yeah.
shop. Yeah.
Yeah, it's a bummer. Reminds me a lot of like Amazon in that way, where sometimes you'll just find, like, you'll look something up and it's just full of like knockoff crap.
Or, it's the 2 terabyte USB drive. And it's like, come on, Amazon.
Etsy still has good stuff, but you have to dig for it. And now people are probably just going to leave it even more.
Have you guys been following the Timo story at all? I forgot to put that in there. Timo is one of those Chinese like social media shopping companies.
Oh, Timu.
Oh, Temu, I'm sorry. And their deals are just complete lies.
Yeah.
And they're using it as like oh, here's a Nintendo Switch for $7. And when you click on it, it's like, oh, well, you're gonna have to invite 10 of your friends to get this deal. And then you invite 10 of your friends. It's like, well, that's a really good deal. You're gonna have to invite 10 more. Then a timer starts. So
no.
You have 24 hours.
That stresses me out.
It's just complete manipulation.
Wow.
That's our future.
Yeah. Yeah, they actually reached out to us to advertise with us and was like, we have unlimited buckets of money to advertise. And it's like, don't pass the sniff test. Sorry.
Anyway, we'll see you guys on the next day. Bye.